Yeah, welcome, Jeff.
Good to be here. Thanks.
It's been way too long.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, we're having a discussion about Nostr, and I know you're a big Nostr fan. So I'd love to get your opinion on this, because we see flaws in the economic model of Nostr that it will basically we're worried that it will eventually run into the same problems as all the other social networks, because it's sort of like the SMTP or it's some other protocol on the internet that sooner or later just converges into these monolithic structures. Because if you as the user, if you're not paying for the service, the relays sort of have the control of your data. I don't know if you heard Matteo's TLDR on theory here before you.
Yeah, I did, or a little bit of it. So some of this will be monetized, and it'll just be monetized. So there's different monetization means of this. But again, if you just kind of go to top, the same thing is exactly happening on Bitcoin. In a world where Bitcoin is a financial system, then prices tend towards the marginal cost of production. And the marginal cost of production is of some of these apps is zero. So they're free. And then where people, so there will always be relays that'll kind of have try to make the trade-off to be able to do a whole bunch of things for free to monetize somewhere else. And then there'll be relays that charge you, and people will make a choice on what they want. And that's going to be a messy kind of transition, just like it's a messy transition to Bitcoin, because most of the people, if you said to what's happening on X, most of the people are unaware that they're paying a high cost for using it for free. Most people on Facebook are unaware that they're paying an extraordinarily high cost in their life. They're just not measuring all of the entire cost of what they're getting, and because very few people are able to step out of that, they just reinforce the existing network. They're doing the same thing on the US dollar network. They're doing the same thing on Twitter. They're doing or X now. They're doing the same thing, and they think that there's a free lunch, and they're getting farmed. So in the entire model in the new world we're moving to looks different, where the productive capacity of the globe works for people and bringing down the price. But it's such a mental shift that people are having a hard time with that. In fact, even if you looked at Bitcoin's security model in mining, I would say a huge number of people misjudge. They think that you need more different things at the base layer to be able to pay for the security, because they're measuring Bitcoin price through a fiat lens, where this Knut, it's in fact infinity day, right? the amount of Bitcoin that you'll mine later on will be worth so much, even the smaller amount, that'll pay for the security model. So I think that transition is extraordinarily hard for people to understand, because most of the time they're still living in the fiat world, measuring everything in fiat and measuring all these models, and they don't measure the true cost of what's happening.
So let me try to wrap this around my head. So you see Nostr as having the same problems, sort of the same problems as the old social media apps during the transition. But after the transition, it's a way better, foundation to build stuff on.
Yeah, well, I would say there's a whole bunch of ideas on how to monetize right now, and the free market is going to come in, and Orange Pill app is doing one of those ideas to monetize. And if they're right, and people like that idea, they're going to create a whole bunch of value for them and their users.
And if there's already are.
Yeah, exactly. And so that is one idea to monetize that. Some relays will charge, some relays will do it free and charge somewhere else by by essentially similar to today on social media. You'll be using something for free, but it'll either be less valuable than something that you're paying for, or they'll be monetizing you somewhere else. And then there's just a whole bunch of reinvention of business models that work inside an environment where prices trend towards the marginal cost of production.
So one of
Can I jump in?
Sure.
Hey, Jeff, good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
So I, of course, relay can monetize. That's fine. Anybody can monetize, actually. I mean, Twitter is monetizing as well. So the fact that you can monetize, it doesn't really add any value to the product. Just like you can pay, my problem with Nostr is like at the protocol level. So forget about who's going to monetize and who's not going to monetize. The user is not paying for the censorship resistant, unlike in Bitcoin, where the user have to pay the miner fees. Otherwise, the transaction doesn't go through. In Nostr, as far as I understand, the censorship resistant is provided by the relays and the clients, and they're paying for the server costs and the infrastructure and all of that. And the user, they can choose to pay if they want to, which obviously, as we know, like imagine if Bitcoin was built like, oh yeah, you have some miners and some miners are doing it for free and some miners you have to pay them. I don't think Bitcoin will ever work if you had that model. And so how do you see
let's just go
at the
back
protocol level, the censorship resistant not being paid by the users, but by the relays and the clients?
Okay, so let's go back to first principles on our way here. If you only had money, separated, if Bitcoin was separated, but all communication channels were controlled by centralized organizations, what do you think the U.S. government would do to GitHub, everything else, to be able to stop technology from moving? Right? They would set a cease and desist, and this can't be shown on GitHub, and those would be closed down. And the communication. So realize that the world we live in has to be centralized in order to essentially steal money from others. The productive capacity of the world should be flowing to us in the form of lower prices, and it's not. And the only way that works is to remove individual rights and freedoms and centralize further. And all of the big tech firms are, I want to be careful, but they're part of that. Because if they're not part of it, then they will be censored themselves. So it is a part of what we're saying. So if you don't have something that's decentralizing communications and rebuilding this from the base layer up, then that would look like a really bad day, because all of your communication, everything you see, would be manipulated. Now take that this step further and say artificial intelligence can change people's minds and decide over time, and you just create an algorithm that says ensure people change their minds on this, and it'll do whatever it needs to be able to optimize that at scale for no cost in a centralized system. That is where we're going without things like Nostr. So Bitcoin is important because it's the base layer, critical. It's a base layer of NUMA, it's a base layer of a new peer-to-peer internet. But you need communication channels that are outside of this existing communication channels. And it's too easy so if you take the other side of Orange Pill app and said, if you were sufficiently centralized and everything else, that was a walled garden, you too, Matteo, would be censored by the state. That's what would happen.
Well, maybe you missed that part. What I said, we should have a protocol for decentralized social media. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. I'm just saying the theory is great, the practice of Nostr, as far as I can tell, it's not scalable, and it's not going to be censorship resistant, because then you're going to have relays which are bearing the cost of transmitting these nodes, between NPub. At some point, they have to you're in VC, you're in technology, so you know how this works. Like, you have to monetize, and you have to do what Twitter is doing, or Facebook, like monetize the data and selling to the highest bidder, which is, one model. They have to charge the user, which is what we do, which is why we don't have ads. So we started from day one. It's like, if you want to pay, you get in. If you don't want to pay, you don't get in. There's no exception to that, because the moment you let people in for free, and I've done the test myself sometimes, and I always regret it. I let people in for free, and they say, "Oh, but now you have to pay." I say, "Oh, actually, I don't really want to pay." So we know humans, if given the alternative of not paying, we always choose the not paying option.
I guess what I'm getting at is, you are one business in millions of businesses that are going to try different things.
Yeah.
And it is not one thing that'll work. It is a combination of a whole bunch of different things, and the market will choose. That's what'll happen. And even on the relays, if the market chose, I'm going to centralize into 3 big relays, and that's what happened, that is a very real risk, because that would be censored. I don't think the market's going to choose that. I think it's going to be so easy to spin up relays that it's going to be like a Tor network, that you can't stop this. And I think eventually what will happen is people will drive their own to be able to store their most important information, and there will be a way to do that that's really simple. Today, there's not a way to do that that's really simple, but it becomes a market opportunity to be able to create that, and it could go along your umbrella or something like that. And now all my passwords, anything else, is stored locally on mine, and I pay for my own storage.
Well, by the way, we don't have a feed in our HPL app, so there is no feed. We're not a social media app. It's a social network, because there's no feed. It's all about DM and meeting in real life. So I wouldn't even consider HPL app as one of the alternatives to social media at all. But back to Nostr, and I'm just curious, like, from first principle, how do you see the censorship resistant of a net? I know you think a lot about system, and that's why I love your book so much. And I've learned a lot from that book. One of my probably top 5 books I ever read. As a system, when you see that there is no embedded economic model, which, as far as I know, that's what brings the security model. In Bitcoin, you have the rewards, the block reward with attract miners, which are the security model. If you don't have the embedded economic model, how could you have the security model, which it's actually which brings the censorship resistance from a first principle system level thinking?
Yeah, so I'm actually not sure that I know, because it's essentially tied to Bitcoin, that that will emerge out of what we're talking about. Could I say it's there? Right? Nostr is really early, but it's not just going to replace, like we're talking right now in social networks and such. That is not, that is, I'll use this as a different example. When other phone companies were competing again, before Apple was in the play, everybody was selling a phone. Then Apple came, and it was a totally different communication device that was everything. And so right now, as Nostr is emerging, what's happening is everybody's taking their bias. Oh, this works in this old world. Let's create the new one over here. And that's what happened in the web too. As this emerges, you're going to see, I can do this on Bitcoin, add Fedi or Fediment, and this, and you're going to create something totally new. I don't know what that totally new looks like yet, but I know that that's where we're going. That's where we're going. And some of the most exciting things will be things we can't even think about today, that are enabled from protocol design that is based on first principles, that allow us to think differently about how we construct the future.
If we go back to Twitter, when Twitter announced that they're going to be more free speech, I guess after Elon took over, that he promotes himself as a free speech maximalist in this. Is all he's doing, just raising the costs for governments to censor the platform? It's what the game is playing. What do you think?
So, if you were a narcissist and you believed you were required to save the world, then, and a whole bunch of people said how smart you are and how great you are and everything else, it could feed that same thing. I think that's what Twitter is. I think that Musk, through his early days before X today, where X was before PayPal, he knew. I saw an interview way back then where he knew about the Cantillon effect, and why he needed to be at the top of the stack. And that's going way back. To think he doesn't understand money is wildly naive. So if he understands money and he understands how that works, then he must understand how Bitcoin works as well to steal that power. And he also must understand that if he creates something himself to be able to tie it to, that's why he's tried so hard. That's why I think he talks about Doge all the time. That's why that's why this is talk about, use essentially the model that everybody's mad at to say you're going to fix it to consolidate power. Exact same way a politician and a fiat system steals power from people by telling everybody else how they're going to fix it, and then they consolidate power. I think that's all that's happening in X, and I think people that are leaning into that and spending all their time there are just making them stronger. And both sides of that, if you're yelling at him on that platform, or if you love him on that platform, you're making it stronger. Similar to the existing fiat world, it can't be fixed from the system, and so you'd just have to go, what are the odds? No, what are the probabilities that he just doesn't know? I'd say exceptionally small. And so if he knows and he chooses to do this, then you know everything you need to know, then you need to move faster to build the alternative. I would virtually, but if you look at the people, both sides of this argument, exactly the same argument that's happening in the political system on both sides of the politicians thinking that they could solve the system globally everywhere, and how people get so emotional about that, and they just make it stronger. That's what's happening in this. And network effects don't die overnight. Network effect of the US dollar is not going to die overnight. People think that we're going to have hyper-Bitcoinization tomorrow. I suspect it's not going to happen. The network effect of X is not going to be gone tomorrow. And why do you believe it? Just look around and look at how many people are yelling at that system and making it stronger in doing so. How do you change that? You spend as much time in the alternative system.
Yeah, for the same reason, this is the reason why I tell people not to engage with shitcoiners at all. Like, do not retweet them, no matter how stupid the tweets are. They're playing the engagement game, and that's like,
yeah. Udi, I can't believe how many people make him stronger. Like, he would be nobody would listen to a thing he said if people just tuned out. He trolls everybody, and they repost his stuff because of it. They make him a hero.
And to a certain extent, that goes for Elon as well. He's a master troll in that sense. It's great at getting the engagement by being just the right amount of provocative. And it's like when I saw an Udi tweet today when he says, now we're talking about him, so we're reinforcing his message somehow But this is just an example of why you shouldn't retweet or why you shouldn't debate with people on the internet that are wrong. Because he said something that the leadership in Bitcoin is a problem because we don't have a clear leadership. And he said later that when someone pointed out that that's the whole point, he said, well, I'm not against no leaders, I'm just against no leadership. Like you could have one without the other. And it's such a, it's engagement farming, and people just don't get through it. Why is that the case?
Sorry, can I jump in real quick?
Absolutely. I think we haven't let you in for ages, so absolutely.
No, that's all right. Great conversation, but I think we're feeding into it now, right? Even just talking about it. I mean, if someone knows that a particular strategy to get engagement by creating your armor works, they're going to keep doing it. And this is something that only works in the current fiat system, which is, eyeball and ad based. And it's great that we're building products and protocols and moving away from that. But also I think the sad part about all of this is the concept of like audience capture. And look at the way in which someone like Anudi, their audience will shape them over time. And it's unfortunate because they're only going to trend in one direction. And, Shane Parrish has this great quote that I always go back to, and it's that bad people will eventually destroy themselves. And I don't wish harm on anyone, but you can kind of protect people from those people. But on a long enough time frame, they're creating their own hell that they have to then live in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, don't worry too much about them.
Yeah, very, very good point. Because as a now content creator, we've been doing this show for a year, and it's been pretty successful. And we've, grown over time. And the bigger we get, the more I feel that these incentives. I realize why, quote unquote, influencers get the way they tend to turn into whatever they turn into, because the incentives are very strong. Because if you figure out a way to hack the system and engagement farm, you get to talk to more people because you're a bigger name, and you get to, and there's value in that. Like I find you guys insanely valuable to me because you're part of this great network, and doing this Freedom Footprint show, part of it, it's just that I want to reinforce my connections with other Bitcoiners that I like. And it seems like the bigger you get, the more you get to talk to people. So there's a clear incentive to engagement farm, but we try our best to not fall into those traps and to not like promote products we don't like, and to avoid it, to keep our integrity high. But I understand why that battle is so hard for a lot of people on the internet, because that battle is so tempting.
It depends what game you're playing. So, Jeff, nice to meet you for the first time.
Yeah, you too.
We live in the same city, and Jeff wrote the foreword for a book I put out very graciously. He didn't know me. I have a huge amount of respect for Jeff. His book was very influential in my thinking. And if I was ever going to get his attention, I would have to demonstrate integrity over time, like sustained integrity. So it's a completely different game than most people are playing on the internet. Are you trying to build the biggest audience you can, like quantity over quality? Or are you trying to demonstrate value to other high integrity people that will then hold you accountable? And then hopefully in the future, you just have a lower stress life because your relationships are just of a higher quality and caliber. Yeah,
but it's so hard though for me, for instance, to move away from Twitter when all my following is on Twitter. Everyone who discovered me from like out of nowhere was on Twitter. So they do have the network effect to their advantage there. So for me, it's very hard to move away from that platform and move on to Nostr and other things. So what are your thoughts on that, Jeff?
Start moving. So it's exactly the same thing that you're saying in Bitcoin. It's very hard for a whole bunch of people to move their time and energy outside of the existing fiat thing because their politics are there, their energy is there, their job is there, and everything else. And if they stay trapped there, their life is going to get worse and worse inside that system. So I know it's hard. That's what gives it strength. That's why we give it strength. So every time you post, you should bias to Nostr first, and you should, if you want to pull people there, tell them why you're there. Because if as more people, same reason you're in Bitcoin, because you were there first, because you understand what it means for humanity, where we're going. And that's, you could say the exact same thing for where Nostr is. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's not Nostr. Maybe it's something else. But communication has to be decentralized as well, because if it's controlled, we know where that goes.
Yeah, because I agree with some of Matteo's points as well. I'm not entirely convinced about Nostr yet and about the underlying economic models. I think there are at least questions that ought to be raised about it. And as you say, it might be something else than Nostr, but it might be another protocol that actually has sats in the base layer of the protocol rather than being built on top. But I don't know what that solution is. And, for what it's worth, I think Twitter for now, and hanging out with Bitcoiners on Twitter, it's still a good alternative for me. As we move along into whatever, but we are doing as many pure Bitcoin platforms as we can. Fountain being a very big part of the success of the Freedom Footprint show, and they're an entirely Bitcoin-based system. So we're trying to move over to as much as we can to the future instead of the past.
Yeah, and again, how could you expect? So the same thing that you're doing in Bitcoin, you're educating more people on why that's critical. You know for sure that if you're educating people on X and you're spending that time in X, yes, there's probably more people there to get to the Bitcoin audience, but you probably, if they're stuck there, they're going to see less and less over time. Right? They're going to see more and more of what Elon wants.
Yeah, those are very good points. And Luke, we should start working on at least being more active on Nostr in parallel to X here in the beginning, and see where it leads us.
Knut, let me make one more point. If I can.
Yeah, Matteo, sorry. I know you've got a point here. I know you've got a point here, but I think
I got many points. Don't worry.
Anil has to run, I think. So Anil, thank you very much for joining us. Much appreciated. Let's chat and connect again.
Hey, Anil, great seeing you. We got to get together in Vancouver.
Absolutely, Jeff. Happy Bitcoin Infinity Day, everyone. Take care. All the best.
Thank you so much, Anil. And sorry for not
meet you, Anil.
There's sort of a crowded room at this hour.
All good. Just speaks to the popularity of the movement, right? Okay.
Thanks. Take care. And well, I guess we've got two new guests at least showing up here. Max, we've actually been having technical issues in the background for a little bit, so thank you for joining. And I see Samson, not with video yet, but we've got a real crowd in the room here now. So thanks so much for joining us, everyone.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. Happy Bitcoin Independence Day or Infinity Day. And let's keep making the infinity meme true.
And Samson, thanks for joining us. Are you at an airport?
Yes, I am. Can you guys hear me okay? I was using this speaker.
Yeah. It's good. We hear you better than Max, actually, but good to see you guys.
Yeah.
And I knew you were going to be in the airport, Samson.
Yeah, I had to make an exception.
Yeah, we're playing Nirvana songs in Riga. Did you hear?
No, I didn't.
No, but we're supposed to. It's happening there too.
I thought you were not going to Riga.
I am going to Riga. Are you going to Riga?
I'm not.
No, you're not. Why not? Who's
Just
going to
wasn't
fill
in the
in
cards. I think you'll find somebody. There's lots of talented people there.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, we've got quite a full room here right now. So here, Matteo, can you touch on whatever you were last going to talk about?
Yes, that's something really quick, and then unfortunately I have to jump off as well. One of the things that maybe Jeff can riff on this is that, as you know, one of the fascinating that I always have with Bitcoin is that you had a system that has taken humans completely out of the loop. When it comes to like the economic model, right? You have to pay the fees to the miners. You have no option not to pay. The fees are set by the protocol. There is nobody saying, no, you know, today you pay this fees and tomorrow you change the fees. So I think one of the genius part of Satoshi is take humans out of the loop completely, set the protocol, set the rules, and then let it run. And when I look at Nostr, it's like, take the humans, put it back into the loop, the humans that runs the relays and the humans that run the clients. And I'm like, if we could have censorship resistant by trusting humans, then we wouldn't need Bitcoin to begin with.
Well, so there's still people in the loop in Bitcoin. All of us are in the loop, holding the rules of Bitcoin, right? And unwilling to make hopefully unwilling to make too many compromises on the base layer to risk centralization. And there's a whole bunch of economic actors in people trying to make money in mining. So why is that different than economic actors trying to make money in relays?
So imagine so imagine, well, first of all, we know how hard it is to change the rules in Bitcoin. And we all done that test in 2017, the block size worse. Even if you had a lot of power, you still couldn't change the rules. So humans could not change the rules of Bitcoin, which is what makes Bitcoin, at least for me, a system that I can trust because I don't have to trust humans. And the miners do not have the power to change the block reward.
Yeah. So, but that's kind of what I'm getting at. Same as the relays don't, because the relays, it's just a free market that is going to emerge, and some people are going to price it high, some people are going to price it low, and they're going to offer all different services. They don't have a they don't have a way to change the network. They have
they don't have a way to change the economic model because there isn't one.
Exactly. But again, so to be able to access the Bitcoin network, essentially, you being a part of the network model. You owning Bitcoin, there was a cost for you to buy Bitcoin or a cost for you to mine it.
Yeah.
So whether there's a cost to pay for a relay, there's a cost, and whether you choose not to pay that cost and use a free relay that has to defer their cost and make money somewhere else or a different economic model, there's still a cost to use it. The difference right now is you're saying, here's what it's going to look like. It's all going to centralize because people are going to do this. And I'm saying we have no idea what it's going to look like. There's going to be people on both ends of that spectrum. People are going to charge a lot for really premium relays, and people are going to try to monetize separately for really shitty, maybe relays that are monetizing somewhere else. We don't know what that looks like, but the cost is still there. Just like the cost to enter the Bitcoin network is still there.
If I could jump in for a second.
I don't see the cost, but maybe I'm looking at the wrong place.
Brian, go ahead. But I think we've been having this conversation for about 45 minutes here. So, but Brian, you can have a last word here.
Yeah. So all I was going to say was, it really seems like the economic model is built into the first layer of Bitcoin, where the economic model of Nostr will be built into the second layer of it. So it's whether it's fundamental or built into the concrete of it. I kind of feel like with Nostr, it's like you hear these corporations talk about blockchains that don't have cryptocurrencies on them. I feel like that's what Nostr is right now. And then they're just trying to find a way to create an economic model into it, where when it's embedded into the layer one, that seems a little bit more sound. That's why what Matteo is saying really resonates with me, that it's immutable. You can't escape the economic model of Bitcoin, where Nostr could escape the economic model of whatever layer two is coming. And now I know, Jeff, you're saying that you think it it still has a promising future because it's left to be told. But to me, that's what the fundamental difference is.
Yeah.
Okay, I think here. I think maybe we can hold the Nostr Orange Pill app Twitter debate. We can finish this off another time. Maybe we'll actually do a whole separate thing here. But I think we've covered it pretty good here. So thanks guys.
Matteo and Brian, thanks so much for coming on. And happy Bitcoin Infinity Day. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. But I think the best option now is to kick these people out because the room is becoming
censorship.
We're applying censorship to you guys now. And
all right, guys, great to be with you and great
Thank you so much.
Guys, much love and talk to you soon again.
Thanks a lot.
I'll catch you soon. Bye bye.